Hello, this is Ryan O'Reilly. I wanted to take a moment to inform our listeners that the episode you're about to listen to concerns the author P.D. James. Unfortunately, Miss James passed away shortly after the recording of this episode, but before its release. From all of us here at NDIOS, we wish to express a heartfelt condolence to Miss James' family and her loved ones, and we offer this episode as a small tribute to her timeless dystopian novel, The Children of Men.
Welcome to tonight's podcast with Ryan Sean O'Reilly, David Wilkinson, and Richard Mell. This is There Is No Deodorant in Outer Space. Now, let's begin.
Welcome back to another glorious episode of No Deodorant in Outer Space. I'm your illustrious host, Ryan Sean O'Reilly, and with me is my usual gang of troublemakers.
Yo, yo, yo!
That would be Richard Mell.
What's going on, peoples?
All right. And also, here, slightly under protest and mostly under weather, David Wilkinson.
Hi. No, I love being here. I'm not well. So, hey, hi crowd.
Hey! What's wrong? Why are you feeling under the weather?
No, I just, I woke up with like it hurt to swallow, and my ear hurt, and I'm prone to ear infections, and I went to go see a doctor who happens to be my father-in-law, who made a lot of disparaging remarks about not infecting his grandkids. And he said,
with love,
no antibiotics for you. He said, most throat infections are viral, 3 out of 4. I said, can you please just give me some antibiotics? He's like, no, here's some mouthwash. It's probably a virus. So, I'm just going to sit here and get sicker and sicker. But I'll have great fucking breath.
Alright, enough about you. Let's get on to the subject matter at hand.
Oh, okay.
So tonight we're going to be reviewing the book The Children of Men, which is by the author P.D. James, and the movie Children of Men, which was directed by Alfonso Cuaron and starred Clive Owen. So, alright, let's get right into the author here, P.D. James, another English citizen, and I think this is our first, our first female author we're reviewing on the show?
First one born a female.
I think so.
Alright, let's go around real quick, and everyone just give their initial thoughts. Wilk, we'll start with you.
Okay. Rain Man and a evil version of Forrest Gump fight over the fate of the world.
Ooh, juicy. Rick, what about your initial thoughts? Let's see if we can get it down to one sentence with you.
Oh, well, yeah, I would say,
that was already too many sentences.
okay, yeah, that's right. That was like 2 sentences already.
There's some more.
Yeah, kind of like a, Cloak and Dagger, mixed with, some really good science fiction. Jesus Christ. Let's see. Children of Men. I don't know why they called it The Children of Men, but they did.
And we'll go with that.
All right.
So, for myself, I'll say mass infertility leaves a dwindling society listless and jaded, but hope and faith lies in the hands of the meek. This story has like a sort of reflective deepness to it that struck me afterwards.
Well, yeah. Well, really, the whole Children of God thing I really took because I'll let you get into your horribly boring description of the book in a second here, which you guys do for the first 20 minutes. But the Children of Men to me was like an overall tone.
Good working conditions here.
The Children of Men to me was kind of like a antacid to the tone of the book, saying that perhaps there is divinity in men, perhaps there is something noble about the human race, and it should go on, contrasted with the fucking horrible protagonists. Okay. So, go on.
Yeah, I this is a very interesting read this month. Let's get right into the author then, after that debacle of a summary. And, Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about Miss James?
P.D. James, she's a 92-year-old English author who had worked for the health system in England, and her father was a kind of like a middle class tax attorney, or maybe just tax accountant she was born 2 years after World War One, so she's seen a whole lot. And she kind of mentions one of the most world-changing events that have happened in her life was the atomic bomb dropping on Japan. She always knew that she could write, and she just wasn't available, or she didn't have the time to do it until she was sort of middle-aged.
Yeah, she was a late bloomer. I think what you're alluding to is she obviously lived through World War II, and her husband, who I think was an army doctor, suffered mental illness after the war. And from what I could tell, he was basically debilitated until his death in '64. And she had to become the primary breadwinner. They had 2 daughters. I think they went and lived with his family, who helped raise the daughters. And Miss James, in a time when women were not typically the breadwinner, although women have always had strong roles, not necessarily always recognized as such, but she had to kind of take charge and run a family. And she, like you said, she went into, I think, hospital administration initially, and eventually she moved over to the Home Office in England, and I think worked in the criminal section, which aided her later in her writings. She retired from the government in 1979, so she spent a good amount of her life working in government, had a full career, I guess you'd say. And I saw some interview where she kind of felt like she should, if going to do a job, she should try to do it right and get something out of it. And she kind of worked her way through these positions despite sort of getting a tougher lot in life, which is pretty admirable. And she always wanted to write, and eventually, when she had more time, she did start to write. And then when she got into writing, she initially got into detective novels. She's, I think, known as the queen of detective novels. And one of her big protagonists is Adam Daglish, I believe it's called. He's a policeman/poet. And I think she writes in typical detective novel tropes. So this work that we're reviewing, Children of Men, which is more dystopian science fiction, is out of her normal bounds, which kind of makes me think of who wrote Pillars of the Earth. You guys read that?
No.
I haven't.
I forget that author. That author was primarily a thriller writer, and then he wrote that story, which was like historical fiction, which was out of his bounds, and he had big success with that too. So those are just some things that I picked up with her. Anything else that you noticed, Rick?
Yeah, I noticed that she's kind of an advocate for women, of course. I think I felt a little bit of regret in her voice and just in her tone when she was explaining how she kind of had to kind of be this independent working mother trying to raise her children at the same time when her husband was back from World War II and not in a good mental state. So she had to show a lot of courage, and it was and
she stuck with him. They never divorced.
Oh, that's right. She never left, and that was the lesson that she taught her daughters. I mean, it's not a lesson that she wanted to teach, but it was something that she had to kind of go through to set an example. And I don't think that's the only reason she did it. I'm sure she loved her husband, but
yeah, she said that he was a good father, and they had a lot of good times, despite his condition.
Right.
What happened to him?
He just had suffered mental illness after World War II, and basically.
Did he kill himself?
No.
No.
But he was hospitalized for it, but not completely out of their lives. He was still in their lives, but I mean, basically, he just had mental illness the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And how's this guy related to you?
Oh, that's a great comment, Wilk. Why don't you write that on your blog?
No, is this like your uncle we're talking about here, or what?
No, we're talking about P.D. James's husband.
Oh, because it was so fucking boring. I just thought we were talking about one of your relatives.
Oh!
Sorry, no,
yeah.
Go on, yeah.
Does
she have a sister? Or any cousins that had problems too?
Well, as much as you say that's boring, I think it's not the typical experience of a woman growing up, being born in the 20s and having to take over the role of breadwinner, and then having to deal with a spouse who has mental illness.
What's the typical experience of growing up in the 20s? Her husband goes off to war, comes back, screams German things at him.
It's going to be that kind of a night.
No, but I mean, what is...
All right, all right. Let's
Oh
just
my
get
God.
through it.
In the States, okay, the men who came back from World War II, they do crazy things. They buy like motorcycles, become part of the Hells Angels or something like that. They had outlets in this country.
That does not seem like a typical thing either.
They had outlets in this country. In that country, they were labeled and they were basically sent to these, hospitals for the mentally ill, and it was just poor care. And
Socialized
I mean,
medicine. I thought you loved it.
yeah,
That you
exactly.
loved it. That you love
Well,
socialized
I don't
medicine.
love that. No, I don't. Sorry, Will.
Obamacare. You voted for him. Embrace it.
You did too, bitch. Mm-hmm.
I don't know who I voted for. I just go and vote for someone I never heard of. If I vote at all.
Very good,
I
Will.
don't.
I just can't put my finger
I
on
don't
you.
condone elections.
You are like a gray man, Will.
Why does every man have a master, Rick?
Wow.
All right, and so she also became a baroness of Holland Park. So she has a title.
True or false? That's a G.I. Joe character.
Good question. I don't know.
Wasn't there one called the Baroness?
She's also Rick. She's a member of the Conservative Party. What is? Do you know what that is? The equivalent in England? Is it like the Conservative Party here?
Well, God save the Queen. You know, I mean, it's just, kind of bowing down to royalty.
Is it okay? Well, is it really? Well, hey, actually,
She
I'm
figures
curious.
herself a product of the Victorian age.
Well, hey, I'm actually kind of curious.
so of course
what is
she's
the Conservative
conservative.
Party in England? What does that compare to? Yeah, because aren't there a lot of parties in England, like 4 or 5?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I hear conservative. Is that Margaret Thatcher's party? Do any of us know?
Oh, that could be.
I believe so.
Okay. Do we like Margaret Thatcher? Do we hate her? Would you make out with her?
I don't like her. No, I don't like Margaret Thatcher.
Just think about her specifically. Her smell.
Margaret Thatcher,
I'm sorry. I'm not.
It's
doing well.
the Tory Party. It's center right in England,
Conservative Party is.
but it's center right.
Yeah, they're not like the racist party that hates immigrants, right? That's a whole different party, isn't it? It's like some.
no, that is the party, I
No,
believe.
but there's a real right party.
So in conclusion, I'll say she's still alive. She's 94 years old.
Mhm.
Still.
The interview that I was watching earlier, she was 92. She was still thinking about writing another book, and she was like toying around with the idea because she's like she didn't want to die before she finished it.
She would hate writing a book that just couldn't stand up to the standard that she is so kind of expected to produce,
That's respectable.
I really enjoyed her writing style, though. I thought it was very soothing and unique, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have anything else to say about her as a person? We can move right into the book.
Just dedicated, disciplined, got a complete, intelligent, clairvoyant head on her shoulders.
Wilk, what about you? You have any other non sequiturs you want to throw at us?
I don't know who she is. I mean, I just know her name. I liked her book, but I don't know the goddamn thing about her. I didn't know if she was English until just now, so.
She's got a really thick English accent.
Wow, why don't you marry her? She's single.
So let's get into the book, The Children of Men. Wilk.
Yeah.
My friend, why don't you give us a quick synopsis of this book?
Okay. It's a world where humans can no longer have children. It's not really explained. And we're here approximately 24, 25 years after the last human's born, and every interaction imaginable is tied to the fact that humans are dying off. As we move forward, we have one main character who's the cousin of the new dictator of England, and a small rebellious group contacts him so they can make contact with his cousin. And that's really the premise of the book. I don't want to say much more because I'm seeing spots.
Okay, that works. So one of the things right out the bat that I'll say about this book is it's written in 2 different perspectives. Part of the book is written third person, and part of the book is written first person. And the first person entries are primarily consist of diary entries. So you tend to flip back and forth between those a little bit. Rick, how did you feel about that? Did you like that aspect of it? Did you not like the To me, I felt like maybe this is coming from her detective writing background, why she chose to go that route.
I just thought that the diary was just an opportunity for the author to just sort of illustrate the main character's inner conscience because, well, too, it's kind of like a deeper, more philosophical, insightful level. She very well could have done that when she was the third person narrator.
Yeah, she did. And I mean, she did give insights into his thoughts when she was in third person, but maybe it was a different style when it was a diary.
But I think more it was kind of like to kind of keep track of his incriminating thoughts for what he was. It was kind of setting him up to progress as sort of like the leader of the rebellion. And at the end, I mean, he definitely trashes the diary because he's afraid that he's going to die. He's going to be interrogated and executed like that.
Which I thought was a kind of an interesting move, because you thought maybe the diary would become more relevant later in that it would be found or something. But since it's never found, I kind of wonder, well, did we really need to have it written like that?
No, we did. It was there to show shame, that he knows that he's not a good person.
Shame and like a heightened sense of neurosis.
I don't see any redemption of the character here.
Hold on. Will, go ahead.
I mean, the diary, I think, was essentially a conscious, and I think the move at the end, he's contemplating taking over the role of the leader, of being the powerful one. He has a chance to seize power, or he looks at it and he kills the leader. I think ultimately he's kind of lived in the shadow of his cousin. There's some resentment, there's some envy, and I think he'd be happy to show everybody who's now dead that he could be the same thing. I don't think he's that good of a person.
But why use the diary to tell this story? Why use that diary?
Because the fact that he does destroy it, it's nothing that he's proud of it. He's ashamed of it. He's not a good person. He's not reminiscent.
So you feel like the diary, when he throws away the diary, that's like a turning point for his character?
Not really. I think his character's pretty shitty from the get-go. I think his character can vacillate a little bit back and forth between different shades of worthless and evil. But he's not going to rise to the occasion. He's not a good guy. He's not a bad, horrible guy. He's just very blah. To me, I feel like his character would be different if he was on antidepressants. I'm like, this guy needs some Wellbutrin, as does his cousin, but this is who they are, this is what we're reading about. The more interesting characters are the ones that were vibrant, that were living, that, I don't know. I thought he was a good vehicle to compare and contrast to, and I kind of look at him as a tragic figure in a non-tragic story.
Well, yeah, before we get into that aspect, so the fact that it was switching back and forth between the diary and, I guess, present tense, that didn't bother you. It was seamless to you.
This conversation is bothering me. But it is, seamless seems like a rough word. No, but it did not bother me.
Okay. I guess I kind of was a little bit thrown off from it initially. I think that maybe she did that to show more of the backstory and to develop the relationship between the protagonist and the antagonist, that being Theo and Xan, who becomes the leader, and show this kind of interesting relationship they have, which, you started to get into, and I guess let's do that, I guess, right now. Did you guys feel, well, I guess we'll go to you, Will. Did you feel that both Theo and Xan didn't have any real redeemable qualities? I agree with you in the sense that they sort of are difficult to like, both of them, even the protagonist. Theo, what we know about him is that he's very, it came across to me, he's very detached. He kind of just does things to go along in life, and he ends up getting married just because he finds what he thinks is a suitable mate, and it doesn't work out ultimately, but that's not even revealed until he accidentally kills his own kid, which is this horrible tragedy that he seems to even make himself more detached after that happens from just the world in general. And to me, the whole point of this story is having this character, this Theo character, grow from being this completely callous, or not completely, because I think Xan is more callous, but growing from that callousness to actually learning how to love, which happens when he runs into the other characters. So, what are your thoughts on that, Will?
You asked a question early on, then you just went on a monologue. I really forgot I was trying to answer your question, then you, what was your question?
Well, sometimes in this podcast, I will say my opinion.
You did. No, I'm Ryan, I honestly forgot what your question was. You asked it early, then you kept talking.
How do you feel about those characters? Do you feel like they're,
how do I feel about those characters? Okay, oh yeah, evil.
Do you like them? You
use the phrase, no, they're not despicable. Use the phrase no redeeming traits. I don't think that's even true. I just, well, I'm going to reference another author to describe them. Tolkien would often describe his view of humanity and his characters as that, nothing was inherently evil, but everything was corruptible. I think what you're watching in this whole book is you're looking at Xan, who's more corrupt than Theo, and you're watching Theo kind of, again, vacillate between being corrupt or being kind of human. But I just feel like he's kind of crossed a point before we read the story that I'm not at, and I can't really relate to, where he is callous, might be a good word. Yeah. He's just no one that I really would want to associate with, but the world itself, the book is so well written, and the world itself is so interesting, and the story it's telling, it's an honest narrator that I don't really like, I think. Maybe he's an
interesting character that way.
I've never quite read a book like this before where I don't really root for the protagonist at all, but I'm not really rooting against him.
Yeah.
He's truly just telling me that he's like, maybe he's kind of like I don't know. I wish I felt better. But yeah.
So, I mean,
No,
so let's go to Rick. Let's go to you now. The protagonist's cousin is Xan, who they grow up together, but Xan is way more ambitious and eventually works his way through life and becomes the self-appointed dictator of England. He can claim some benevolence because he feels like, because of what's going on, that there's no more children being born. People are getting kind of complacent and listless, and so he tries to institute these 3 principles of, freedom from care, freedom from want, and freedom from boredom. And he uses
I think it's freedom of security. Instead of want.
Right. He does this as an excuse to get more power for himself. And in some respects, he's effective because he does remove the criminal element. All the criminals are sent to the island of Man. If you do anything wrong, you're going there.
Yes.
And he establishes law and order, but it's sort of at the sacrifice of some freedoms and maybe some dignity. So, I mean, how do you feel about Xan as composed?
Okay, so what do you want from me?
How do you feel about Xan as opposed to Theo?
Well, you have to look at from the perspective of which it's served, I think. It goes all the way back to their childhood. Xan is the chosen one. He was born into a wealthier family. That's how things work. He was sort of groomed to be this opportunistic fellow. I mean, talk about sort of, seizing the opportunity. He was groomed to do that. His cousin, Theo, came from, his mother was resentful toward her sister who married into this money, and that's how he grew up. So I was able to have a lot of sympathy for Theo, even though he was kind of a douchebag. He was just sort of like this. He was detached.
And you think it's because of his upbringing? His mother wasn't overly loving.
Yeah, exactly.
There is some sympathy there. That's a good point.
Exactly.
So, the interesting things about this world is that it's a dystopian future. It's not that far in the future. There's not crazy technology going on. It's more of this, as opposed to a lot of dystopian fiction. There is no cataclysmic event where the world is upturned. What happens is people can't have babies anymore. So the world is slowly dying away as opposed to this big magnificent event. And you're actually seeing the nature and the wild places of the world start to encroach into the cities, and mankind have to, slowly, close in and make do with less and less. And some of the odd things that are going on is, people are having difficulty coping with the fact that they can't have babies. So they're having unnatural attachments to dolls. They're having baptisms for their pets. They're also sending all the criminals to the island of Man, like I said. And we find out that what they did is they put the criminals there and they just said, okay, you guys just fend for yourselves. And supposedly they give them enough food and supplies to establish their own little colony. But, we hear from rumors that it's not really going as great as the government says. But they're criminals, so maybe people don't care. The other thing they do to supplement the labor force there is they bring in immigrants, who they call sojourners, to come and work, which England is supposed to be this bastion, this last holdout of civilization. So supposedly this is a good deal for the immigrants, but then the immigrants, when they work in England for a number of years and they get older, they're not allowed to stay there. They're forced to leave, and people think that's not right. And then the other thing that's probably more major than those things is the quietus, which is, I guess, encouraged suicide of the old. Wilk, what did you think about that aspect? Why don't you explain it a little bit?
They encouraged old people to kill themselves by drowning when they turn 60. And by encourage, they force them to in a lot of cases, just to go to these mass drownings. Hello?
You sound sick, Will.
What's up?
You sound sick.
Guys, I can barely stay awake, so I'm doing all I can here.
Okay. So the quietus, I mean...
you don't sound sick now, though.
No, I'm sorry, I really was drifting off there. The quietus was, this is written in 1992, and, it kind of reminds me of, the first episode of Futurama. I actually note here, there was a joke where Fry, the main character, goes into a suicide booth, and, suicide was strongly encouraged here because as people grew older, no one could take care of them.
There's no more youth around to look out for the old.
Yeah, right. And so the implication was that I mean, it was forced in some cases, and the rebellion was trying to destroy the things in other cases. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a creepy concept, but it was very interesting. I don't think it would actually. I mean, I think if this actually happened in the world, I think that again.
I think this strikes a nerve with older people now.
It does, but I think people. I don't agree with this view of the world. Some of the things I do think might happen here. I think people would value life more as it dwindled, as there was less youth. The older people would not be committing suicide or encouraging it, that sort of thing. That part I really didn't buy in the book.
But even when people become really old and they have a lot of ailments, and I guess in the book you do see though that these the old people that the main character interacts with, 'cause I think he's like professor friend Jasper. He realizes that they're going to start pushing him to commit suicide, and you can see he's fearful about it. So when it comes right down to it, the people don't really want to do it, and you find out that they are kind of being forced into it. So maybe it's realistic in that sense, is that the government is kind of using propaganda to say, well, we don't force people to commit suicide. This is just, people just, if they want to die with dignity and not be a burden on us, this is what they'll do.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, but the propaganda is just there. It's constant. It's everywhere, man.
Right. And that's
so what?
And that's what this rebellious organization, the Five Fishes, uses to turn Theo to their side by telling him to go check out one of these quietest mass suicides, and to go see for himself that they're not so voluntary as he was led to believe. Because Theo did work in the government for his cousin for a while. And eventually, he quit because he realized no one really cared what he said, so he just went off to become a professor. Rick, what did you think about the Five Fishes, the rebellion, as opposed to the council? I think there's 5 members of the council, right?
5 members of the council, yes. There was a scene of the council meeting, just a short description of each member. One guy was head of the energy department. He was kind of like this brassed up, ex-military, didn't appear to be extremely intelligent, and always didn't have the most intelligent thing to say, but he was an extremely organized, hard worker, blah, blah, blah. I mean, bottom line is you couldn't trust him. You couldn't trust anybody on this panel.
On the council?
On the council. That's, of course, from Theo's perspective.
But you also get the sense that Xan doesn't really even care too much what they have to say either. He just does what he wants.
I think Xan just uses them as the tools they are. I mean, they're all heads of these ministries that run the government, and he's just kind of monitoring everything, making decisions.
And they're trying to keep up appearances that there is some kind of egalitarian government, some kind of representative.
Yeah, I don't know.
Really...
I mean, that's a given. I mean, what government would not want to throw up that perception to its own people? That's the perfect sort of veil to have out there.
And so contrast them to the Five Fishes, who are the rebellion, who court Theo and get him to join them.
Well, okay. The Five Fishes, they claim that they're extremely religious, and they're just activists for all of these events that are going on, like the exportation of prisoners to the Isle of Man. The prison is run very poorly. There is no order there. It's like freaking Bartertown from Beyond Thunderdome, I guess. Huh. But another thing that they're protesting is quietus. They feel that people should have more dignity than that. They all kinds of sort of sweet pieces of just issues that people would just like to have in their fantasy, which is none of these things are really possible in reality, but this is what they're trying to accomplish. But I mean, the reality is they're basically just trying to start an uprising because they know they've got the alpha baby. It's all a facade, just like what the counselor or the council would kind of do to its own people. I mean, these people are basically looking to replace the people of the council.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes and no. I think you say they're all religious, but I don't think they're all religious. I think they all.
I said they claim to be religious,
but they don't. Not some of them. Some of them don't claim to be religious at all. I think there is.
They claim to be religious.
There's a couple of them, but there's
Rolf is the leader of the I shouldn't say terrorist group. It's this Fishes group, but
I don't believe Rolf.
Rolf tolerates it.
Yeah, but he doesn't claim to be religious, and they all have different motivations. I think some of the characters are more religious and spiritual. Others seem to be more benevolent, and then there's the character of Ralph, who is just probably as ambitious as Xan, and indeed he does want to replace Xan. So I think that they have a kind of eclectic mix as far as motivations.
I think, okay, you've got Miriam, who is the
midwife.
The midwife, and she's kind of in her own sort of Zen world where she's just kind of doing her duty to deliver this baby. That's all she has in mind. And she's willing to just kind of appease Julian, who is this pregnant woman. And then you've got Luke, who is, I think he's a minister or priest, but he's kind of there to say prayers. And I think, I had the perception that everybody in that group partook in the prayers.
No,
even Rolf.
No, it was just Julian.
Okay.
No,
even
it was
Rolf.
just Julian and Luke. There was a scene where Julian and Luke go off on their own. They just prayed.
Right.
Oh yeah, scene. But this group has been together for a few years. I don't know.
Okay, well,
but
and let's say this is a huge significance because Julian is actually pregnant, and she would be the only pregnant person in the entire planet. So they're actually keeping this a secret, and their goal is they want to go have this baby and not have the government take the baby away from them. But pausing there, Wilk, did you think that there was a lot of religious tones in this book, or do you think it's more subtle? What did you feel about about religion in this book?
I feel like it was written by someone who was agnostic. I feel it was written by somebody who was agnostic, and you could probably look at it from either way, depending on where your beliefs are. I mean, if you don't really have a strong faith, it'll probably validate that. If you do have a strong faith, it'll validate that. I think it was kind of written in a way that you could fill whatever empty vessel the reader has in their perception of God.
Yeah, it's not very heavy-handed, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I think that's the subtle. I really think the book has a subtle genius to it. I think it's a very well-written book. I think every word is well-crafted. Every sentence has meaning. And it was really, like I said, it wasn't a light read, but it was I enjoyed reading it. But
it's not a super long or dense book either.
No, but it's, I'd like to read a Cormac McCarthy book next year, but it reminded me of some of his stuff where, again, I would often reread it. I mean, it was dense. It was, I could, if I poured some water in there, I'd have a James Patterson book, but it's a good book.
Yeah. Well, okay, then let's get to the kind of the end where there's a sort of showdown between Xan and Theo. The two cousins face off. But, I thought it was kind of a profound scene. Obviously, maybe it was not all that unexpected, but in the end, it's just the two cousins, and they have this interesting relationship because they're both sort of detached people, and yet the only family they have really in the world of any significance is just each other. And how do these two detached people have feelings for each other? And then there they are face to face with guns at each other.
Yeah, their feelings aren't that strong. They tried to kill each other, and one of them succeeded. They really are. It's like they want to be a good person, but they're not a good person. I mean, that's the thing. They recognize themselves enough to be like, we're kind of shitty people, but here we are. So they're not that. I mean, they really aren't that. They aren't great guys.
But do you think? Don't you think that Theo grew? By the end of it, he learned to find love at the birth of this baby and caring for Julian.
No.
But, I agree with you. There is a question at the end because when they have this Lord of the Rings moment of this, where Xan is wearing the wedding ring of England, he's taken from, I guess, the crown jewels or whatever, and then he's killed, and Theo puts the ring on his finger to show the other council, I'm in charge now, and Julian says, well, why don't you take it off? And he's like, well, I'll take it off later. And that does, I guess that does kind of go to your point.
Yeah, I really think the book. I think he's a placeholder. I think Xan is the alpha and Theo's the beta. I mean, he's not. They're not like they're not polar opposites. They're just successions. And with Xan out of the way, Theo can rise to be Xan because that's the thing. There's similarities, but they're. I don't know. The point is, I think, is that we will carry on. Men will carry on. Bad men will carry on and good men will carry on. But it's, I don't think he got anything out of it other than a quest for power. I mean, that's it.
It wasn't a quest for power, though. He never wanted the power.
But in the end, when he puts the ring on,
But Rick, he did want the power because he didn't really articulate what he wanted, and like Ryan said, he learned to find love. He knows that's what he should say. That's what he wants to say. Theo, not Ryan, but that's what Theo wants to articulate. Yeah. I don't know, but what he really got out of that, out of that whole experience, out of his whole life, he puts the ring on his finger and he's ready to assume the Warden of England position. And he
fell into it.
Guy.
He fell into it. It kind of aligned with his.
Did he fall into it, or did he kind of follow that path?
It is an interesting ending because I kind of felt like Theo was going to find love, but that whole thing with the ring puts it into question.
Yeah, it's a very agnostic book.
Rick, go ahead.
Different. I don't think anyone's wrong here. I'm just saying that's what I got.
Let's get on to the movie.
I thought you had a final thought. No?
No.
All right. Well, then, it sounds like we all enjoyed the book. We can go ahead and move on to the movie, Children of Men, which was directed by Alfonso Cuaron and starred Clive Owen. Wilk, tell us a little bit about the director.
Mm-hmm. The director, I think everyone's pretty familiar with right now. He probably has made movies that have been put in front of every single person that goes to movies' eyes at one point. He was famous for an art house Mexican movie. E2 Mama.
He was born in Mexico, right?
He was born in Mexico.
Yeah.
E2 and Your Mama. I can't think of the name right now, but it's E2 Mama También, whatever it is. It's
E2 Mama.
It's a movie that takes place on the precipice of of a historical election in 1999 in Mexico. I remember watching it and being really excited about all the nudity when it was out. And I was really too old to be excited by nudity, but I don't know. I was lonely for a few years there in the turn of the century. But yeah, it was a good movie. And then he directed a really, I had no idea he directed this movie, but he did a remake of Great Expectations, which I've always really liked. Yeah, with De
Niro, right?
De Niro, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Ethan Hawke, and
it was good.
It is good. Yeah, I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't know he did that, and then he did one of the Harry Potter movies.
He did the most critical,
the third one,
the most acclaimed one.
The third one, yeah.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Right, one that really can stand alone. I think that you could. It's a very good movie, and Gravity, which I think everyone should see or should not see it. That's a great flick as well. But
that is.
He likes movies. He likes filmmaking. He's passionate about that, and he's described as a passionate person by people that know him. He's well respected in the filmmaking community. He's very popular in the festival circuit. He's written and produced movies. He was associated with a really great movie that Rick would like and Ryan might like, but Rick would probably like it.
Pan's Labyrinth?
Called The Assassin.
Oh.
No, that too. Well, that's his buddy.
Guillermo del Toro.
The director of that. But no, The Assassination of Richard Nixon, which is just a fantastically disturbing, dark movie about a disturbing, dark person, which we should watch.
What did he have to do with that?
I think he was a producer in that movie. I forget.
Isn't he involved with two other Hispanic directors? And
he is, and I'm
the Three Amigos, or people call them.
I'm blanking. Yeah, they're like the Three Amigos, or some. They have some Mexican name like that. But yeah, no, and a lot of his movies are Great Expectations. In this one, he uses long shots. I think he used a few in Gravity, but they're not true Robert Altman long shots. He creates sequences where the camera appears to not move or have cuts for
single shots.
Yeah, but they're not really single shots. He cheats, but he creates the illusion of single shots. But again, it brings an intensity to a lot of his movies. And I mean, this movie and Gravity have a lot of similarities, and where they're almost like you watch them. If you invest in them emotionally, it's like I felt myself with like White Knuckles a couple times with this and Gravity. I rewatched this movie recently, and I guess the contrast with this movie and the book is I actually got more out of the movie this time around after reading the book, because in a lot of ways it had a much more positive spin. The characters were humanized, more so than in the book, and really he made a very solid film. I mean, I watched this in the theater when it came out, I think, and I haven't watched it again since then because it was a great movie, but I'm never going to watch it again, and I had to watch it again for this fucking thing. So
yeah, it's great. Yeah, and he's also I noticed that he's big into editing. He gets really involved with the editing of his movies. He seems basically to be very critically acclaimed. He's won lots of awards for the movies he's done.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to find his association. Yeah, the movies he's done they're all good. I mean, let's see. He was the producer of the Richard Nixon movie that I pointed out, though. That's what it is.
But
Which I would like.
You would like. We should watch it together. It's really.
There's a really dark, disturbed character in the movie. I would love it.
I love it, Rick. I love it. I just think that part of her personality. If you did a Venn diagram, you and I would enjoy that movie.
You think so?
It's great. Sorry, he produced Pan's Labyrinth as well too, which with his buddy.
yeah, that's a great movie.
I've never seen it actually.
He also had a science fiction. He had a science fiction fantasy series called Believe. Did you guys ever see that? I never saw that.
Never. No.
Okay. It only went one season. It got canceled.
Yeah, it sounds like nobody saw it.
I don't watch a whole lot.
All right. Well, then let's just get right into the movie. Rick, give us a quick synopsis of the movie and how it differs from the book.
It differs quite a bit. I guess the characters are quite the same. His cousin takes on a different role. He's not exactly the dictator. He's an art procurer. He runs the Arc of Arts in the movie, and he's extremely well connected and all that. And he's got a really short scene. He's not really in the movie a whole lot. He does Theo a favor to get like a passport for a woman that at the time, Theo had no idea who it was. He was just kind of taking orders from his wife, who was still kind of talking to him. They were
ex-wife.
Ex-wife. I don't know if they were divorced, but they were certainly separated. Mm-hmm. His ex-wife is named Julian. So immediately you think that his wife is the childbearer, but she's assassinated in like the first 25 minutes of the film, and you're like, what the hell?
And that's in one of those amazing continuous scenes. That scene and the explosion in the beginning, that was an amazing scene. And I saw a video on YouTube about how they shot it. They made like a special car so they could have this camera, kind of like a robotic camera, inside the car and move all around. I guess these shots were really hard to do. They had to really rehearse them because it was such a long shot, and they could only do a couple takes. And I'll try to post the video on our website because it's pretty cool to see how they did that.
Yeah, special effects are quite realistic, I think.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt. Actually, I'm not sorry, but I've made a few points about CGI baths. This is the perfect and proper use of CGI.
He said he wanted this movie to be the anti-Blade Runner. He did not want to have like way, way big technology. They tried to get away from.
I didn't know that. That's a great quote. Go on.
They wanted to get away from Blade Runner. We reviewed in earlier podcast, and they wanted to get away from using green screens and stuff as much as possible. And they did use some special effects, but they wanted it to be in like a near future, not this future that people couldn't relate to. They also used Clockwork Orange, I think, as inspiration to set up the dystopian society, which we also reviewed in a previous podcast.
Good science fiction for P.D. James, not a stretch.
Well, again, I don't know how you guys feel overall, but like I really like the book. I really like the movie. I mean, you're a Blade Runner, yeah.
The author liked it too. P.D. James said she liked it.
I read that, yeah. It was a good adaptation. This is a proper cinematic adaptation because. It really, I think it captured the proper elements, the story, the crux of it, but, he made it cinematic. He really is a good director.
He said he didn't read the book. He only read like a synopsis of it. I think his co-writer, one of the other screenwriters, actually read the whole book. But he kept trying to keep it from being just a straight up action film. And he also said he doesn't like things to be overly explained. He likes it to be a little bit more ambiguous, which is sort of keeping, I guess, in spirit with the book, like you just talked about, Wilk. It's everything is not exactly spelled out.
Yeah, no, and that works in some cases too. It works. If the author creates a world that makes sense to them, and they know what goes in the blanks, then it feels congruent overall. I think. Again. I keep comparing her to Tolkien, but Tolkien did the same kind of thing. You can read about Tolkien's work forever, and he really had a vision for his whole world, and it's not all apparent on the pages. I think here too, I feel like it's there was a vision, and the reader was a passenger or a tourist in this world, which is kind of cool.
Well, readers can fill in the blanks if it's well written enough, or viewers.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about the ending? The ending in this is very different because there's no showdown between Xan and Theo, because Xan is basically almost a non-character in this book.
The end, it was a lot more positive. It's a lot more positive.
Yeah, the end has what does it have? They have the childbearer is one of the sojourners, an immigrant, and they're basically trying to get her not to just have the baby, but they're trying to get her to a boat that's part of this supposedly benevolent project that's going to try to help mankind proliferate and encourage reproduction.
I loved the ending, and actually, I saw this movie when it came out. I loved the ending, and I was shocked about the ending of the book, and that's it probably tainted me here a little bit, because I think most of these things, well, I've seen all the movies before, but like, because the ending to me...
You saw the movie first?
Well, I saw it when it came, yeah, I did. I never heard of the book until we started talking about the podcast. I didn't even know it was a book, so, I love the movie. The movie itself, though, I mean, like, the ending to me it was that whole false narration thing where I felt like, oh, these guys were telling the story, but they had no fucking idea about, the people are reproducing. That makes sense. People have figured out, but they're kind of shielding the bad part of the world, the destructive part of the world, with the fact that they can go on. And maybe that's a good thing. That was the impression I got, that there's this whole other...
Oh, you think that they've already figured out how to reproduce, and that, like, the government of England is just preventing the citizens of England from knowing that?
No. I figured that some people had figured out how to do it, be it a spiritual thing, maybe the people that, I mean, if you think about it, it's a fill in the gaps thing. My original thought when watching the movie was that some group had stopped the world from reproducing, so they themselves could reproduce, because the world was a bad place, they wanted it to fade away, and they made a small society somewhere else, and they would bring select people into it as they needed to start over again. It was basically like a benevolent extinction project.
Well, now, but none of that is in the movie. This is all your
that
theory.
Was all my It's still my theory. I mean, if you really look at this objectively, from a scientific.
How does benevolent extinction work?
Rick, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just what I just explained. It was a group that figured they're not going to kill the human race. They're just going to stop them from reproducing. It's benevolent in the sense that they're not doing anything cruel to people. They're just taking away somehow, through science, their ability to reproduce. Perhaps they did something. They put something in the water, but they didn't kill anyone. They didn't hurt anyone. But that was my impression. Some group somewhere had figured out how to stop reproduction, and they did it, except amongst themselves. And that small percent would carry on the population, and the rest would just die off without being murdered or killed.
That's interesting, because like the book and the movie, it's not explained why people can't produce. And they never reveal that at all. And, they lead to this hope of this human project or something where they're trying to get this birth mother too, but you don't even know what's going on with that organization, because the movie ends with this boat showing up, and here's hope that she's going to go there and everything's going to be okay, but you really don't know. And I think the director said that.
But there's other kids in the boat. There's other kids in the boat, though. You hear the kids playing and crying at the very end. Remember that? Did you see that part?
I heard that, but that was like on the fade out, so I don't know if that necessarily means they're on the boat.
That's what I got. But that's...
I don't know. I think the director purposely did it that way so that you would... He said... You could look at it as like a sort of hopeless ending or a hopeful ending.
Well, that's the thing. It's agnostic. The book's agnostic too. It's you can go either or. And again, it's like, do you believe God stopped man, or do you believe man stopped man from producing? I mean, was it science or was it God, or how do can you conflate the two somehow? And to me, that's the imagination part. We could sit around in a smoky room and discuss this for hours. But to me, the most logical explanation, being a logical guy sometimes, and a guy of science, is that some group figured out how to stop the world from producing. They kept it a secret. And again, it's the benevolent extinction. That's my take on it. And what do you guys think happened? I mean, again, it's truly, what do you think? I don't think there's an answer, but
I didn't get that read into it. I just kind of thought that it was just something that happened naturally, and...
Well, then you're retarded. Rick, what did you think? This was...
I just think it's something that happened naturally.
It's the most unnatural thing in the world. How do you make it? How does the entire planet magically stop reproducing?
Why is there diseases? Why are because as populations increase, people become less fertile and stuff. There's been studies that you take a bunch of like rats and you keep them living all close together, they produce less than if they're spread out. Just something like that was happening. And it eventually,
really answer the question.
In the book, people end up reproducing again, not because they figure something out, but just because it's like misfits.
Well, Ryan, you're clearly you're being submissive.
The mother is an no. What's wrong with the mother? The father is an epileptic, and the mother is
deformity.
What's wrong with the mother, Rick? She has an amputation or something.
Yeah.
And just
there you go.
People didn't realize. People tried to focus all their attention on the best and the brightest, but it turns out they're not the ones who are going to carry the day. It's the meek.
How do you have no theory on this? The entire premise of the book is the most fascinating thing, and you have no original thought about what that could be that drives.
I don't know that it wasn't
submissive.
It wasn't the most impressive thing to me.
You're submissive.
That was just the premise. I just went with it.
See, you're submissive.
So what do you think happened at the end? Is that your question?
No, I'm just saying, why do you guys think humans couldn't reproduce? I mean, that's the question. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I guess, Yeah, I thought it was more like of a scientific thing, not at all having to do with God's wrath, but you know, the book definitely makes the case that large constituents of people did think that they're flagellating themselves and just
How stinky.
becoming monks again. You know.
You're a monk.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
Well, all right. Let's just wrap it up here. You guys have any final thoughts on the book? Rick, what are your final thoughts? You love the book? You love the movie?
I like the book and I like the movie.
All right. Very original. Wilk, what about you?
I didn't hear what Rick said. What did Rick say?
Well, you'll hear it on the replay.
There you go.
I don't listen to this. Let's see. I love the book and I love the movie. They are both great in their own right. This is like 2 for 2. I enjoyed Coraline, but that was much shorter and easier. But yeah, I hope next month's book will be as great, but it won't, and the movie sucks. Can we change it? I did not want to read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Oh my god.
Well, I'll say I feel like that this book, it's interesting because I found I liked it more after I set it down and I had a few moments to think about everything that happened. It sort of like snuck up on me. And I realized I liked it more than I originally thought when I immediately finished it. So I recommend it. And the movie is great and very interesting and well done. So join us next month when we review the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, a total classic, and the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, directed by Charles A. Nichols and Richard Fleischer, which starred Kirk Douglas and oldie goodie, or well, we'll see. Pending that,
God.
we'd like to invite everyone to subscribe to us on iTunes, write reviews, like our Facebook page. You can listen to us on TuneIn Radio as well. Lots of ways to find out about us. With that, good night, everyone. Goodbye.
Night.
For more information on this episode's subject matter, and to read our show notes and post your witty comments, visit us at nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseanoreilly.com. For more information on David Wilkinson or Richard Mell, view their profiles at goodreads.com. The theme music for this podcast was written and composed by John Doyle from the band I Decline. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you've learned a lot. Oh, and always remember one thing. There is no deodorant in outer space.
Okay. All right, so we're all good to go. Ready?
All right.
In
Breathe
5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1. And the movie Children of Men, which was directed by Alfonso Cuaron and starred Clive Owen. So before we begin, let me just tell who's ever eating chips to stop doing that because it's really annoying.
Good. If that was on your line, I was gonna tell you, yeah. It's not. I don't know. It's not me, but yeah. Okay,
Rick,
good.
you have like
It's
all
gotta be
kinds.
right.
I'm just rustling my notes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Contrasted with the fucking horrible protagonists. So go
So
on.
let me just pause right there and say, Rick, I don't know what kind of disaster is going on at your house, but you cannot stop shuffling. What is going on? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just. Well, I guess I am still trying to get settled in here.
Okay, light your cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
Rick, what about your initial thoughts? Let's see if we can get it down to one sentence.
Oh well. Yeah, I would say.
That was already too many
Okay.
sentences.
Yeah, that's right. That was like 2 sentences already.
There's some more.
Let's see. I don't know.
This is amazing. This is an amazing synopsis so far.
All right, Rick, let's go to you. Set up your comments for the night.
Let's see. What can I say? I don't know.
I thought we practiced this.
This is like one of the two things that's consistent every week. I don't fucking care. In a land, okay, for no reason, explain to the reader at any point, which is the whole point. People can't have kids anymore, and the world is slowly dying. At least the humans are. The world itself is thriving as the human population dwindles. That's the backdrop, and really every...
Sorry.
Wow. You are on tonight, Mr. Mel. You are on. Hey,
Okay.
everyone recognize Rick is recording a podcast tonight. Recognize.
Oh, shit. Thanks, Ryan.
Rick, why don't you bump your head against something about 5 more times?
I already
before
did.
Will
I was on the
starts?
damn football squad for 3 years, man.
Oh,
Randy Quad's dog in
oh my
vacation
God.
right now.
Wilk, please
Spits.
start over. In the
What?
future, Wilk, in your synopsises, try to name the main characters. So it'll no,
Oh, okay. It's Theo
he's the protagonist.
and and then his dad Cliff.
Not
He's
make
got
up
a
your own
sister named
characters. Name the
Vanessa.
characters. All right, you guys are on
Rudy?
tonight. It's not even
Yeah.
the alcohol tonight. Now it's just sickness in the head.